The mist clings to the earth like a shroud, and somewhere in the silence, death is waiting. Dawn breaks cold across the prehistoric landscape. Frost covers the grass in crystalline sheets. The air carries no birdsong, no rustle of small creatures, only the steady rhythm of careful footsteps breaking through the morning stillness. A figure moves through the shadows between ancient trees. His breathing creates small clouds in the frigid air. His eyes scan the terrain ahead with predatory focus. Every muscle in his body is coiled, ready. This is a hunter at work. But this morning, something is different. The tracks he follows are not those of deer or wild boar. They are human footprints pressed deep into the muddy earth. The stride pattern tells a story of exhaustion, desperation. Someone is running. Someone is afraid. The hunter pauses, tilting his head to catch the faintest sound. There. A branch snapping in the distance. The soft scrape of bare feet against stone. His prey is close now. Close enough to smell their fear mixing with the morning dew. This is not the hunt our ancestors were supposed to engage in. This is something darker, something that would define the brutal path of human evolution. When survival becomes everything, morality becomes nothing. When food grows scarce and winter approaches, the line between predator and prey dissolves completely. The hunter grips his stone-tipped spear tighter. His knuckles turn white against the wooden shaft. In his mind, there is no difference between the human ahead and the animals he has stalked before. Both have meat. Both have blood. Both can fill an empty belly when starvation comes knocking. He moves forward again, each step calculated and silent. The mist swirls around him like ghostly fingers, concealing his approach. Somewhere ahead, another human being has no idea that death is stalking them through the morning fog. They have no idea that their own species has become their greatest threat. This is how it began. Not with grand battles or noble causes, but with hunger. With the terrible mathematics of survival where one must die so another can live. Welcome to the dawn of humanity, where the first hunters learned their most horrifying lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous prey walks on two legs. The world our ancestors inhabited was not the abundant paradise we imagine in our comfortable modern lives. Picture a landscape where death lurks behind every decision, where the wrong choice of hunting ground means watching your children starve, where winter arrives like a merciless executioner, and only the strongest, most ruthless bands survive to see another spring. Food was never guaranteed. Herds migrated without warning. Rivers dried up. Plant foods withered under harsh weather, and when the natural world failed to provide, our ancestors faced an unthinkable choice: die with dignity, or live by crossing the ultimate taboo. Archaeological evidence paints a brutal picture. Scattered across dig sites throughout Africa, Europe, and Asia, researchers find the same horrifying clues. Human bones cracked open to extract marrow, skulls fractured to access brain tissue, cut marks on ribs and limbs that match the patterns left by stone tools. These were not isolated incidents. This was systematic, methodical. Our ancestors developed techniques for processing human remains that were as refined as their methods for butchering any other animal. They knew exactly which bones contained the richest marrow. They understood how to efficiently strip meat from a carcass. They had turned cannibalism into a survival technology. But this wasn't just about food. It was about territory, about resources, about the fundamental question that has haunted humanity since its birth. Who deserves to survive when survival itself is limited? Small bands of early humans moved across the landscape like shadows, constantly watching for signs of other groups. Smoke from distant fires meant competition. Footprints near a water source meant conflict was coming. The sight of another tribe on the horizon triggered an immediate calculation: fight or flee. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford. Every stranger represented a potential threat to their family's survival. Every encounter with unknown humans carried the possibility of violence, theft, or worse. They learned to read each other like predators, looking for signs of weakness, desperation, or aggression. The psychological pressure must have been unbearable. Imagine living every day knowing that the next group of humans you encounter might try to kill and eat your loved ones. Imagine teaching your children to hide at the first sight of strangers, because those strangers might not see them as fellow human beings, but as walking sources of protein. This constant state of vigilance shaped more than just behavior. It shaped evolution itself. The groups that survived were those who could switch seamlessly between cooperation within their tribe and lethal aggression toward outsiders. They developed an us versus them mentality so powerful that it overwrote basic human empathy. And in this harsh world where humanity preyed upon itself, something even more sinister was taking shape. Our ancestors weren't just learning to hunt each other out of necessity. They were learning to enjoy it. The successful hunters, the ones who could kill other humans without hesitation, became the leaders. The survivors, the ancestors we all carry within our DNA. The hunt for human prey required a different kind of cunning than tracking animals ever could. Animals follow predictable patterns. They drink at certain times, sleep in familiar places, respond to stimuli with instinctual behaviors. But humans think, they plan, they set traps of their own. Hunting another human being meant entering into a deadly game of psychological warfare, where the stakes were absolute. Kill or be killed. Our ancestors developed tactics that would make modern military strategists proud. They learned to track not just footprints but behavioral patterns. They studied how different groups moved across the landscape, where they preferred to make camp, how they responded to threats. They became expert at reading the subtle signs of human presence: disturbed vegetation, discarded tools, the lingering scent of smoke. The ambush was their weapon of choice. Unlike animals, humans could be lured into false security. A seemingly abandoned campsite might conceal attackers in the surrounding brush. An injured person crying for help might be bait to draw victims into a killing zone. They exploited humanity's greatest strength, our capacity for empathy, and turned it into a fatal weakness. Archaeological sites across the globe reveal the horrifying sophistication of these attacks. At Crow Creek in South Dakota, researchers uncovered evidence of a massacre so complete that an entire village was wiped out. Men, women, children, none were spared. The pattern of injuries suggests systematic execution, precise skull fractures designed to kill quickly and efficiently. In Germany, the Herxheim site contains the remains of nearly 1,000 individuals who were systematically butchered and consumed. The bones show clear cut marks from stone tools. Skulls were opened like bowls. Long bones were cracked for marrow extraction. This wasn't desperate cannibalism born from starvation. This was organized, ritualized consumption on an industrial scale. The weapons they used were horrifyingly effective. Stone-tipped spears could punch through human skulls with devastating force. Clubs made from heavy wood or bone could shatter limbs and crush rib cages. Sharp-edged stones became surgical instruments for dismembering the dead and wounded. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect was the psychological dimension. Unlike animals, human prey could understand what was happening to them. They could feel terror. They could beg. They could watch their family members being killed and know with human intelligence exactly what fate awaited them. The hunters learned to use this psychological vulnerability as a weapon. Terror became a tool for breaking resistance. The screams of victims served multiple purposes. They demoralized other prey. They helped coordinate attacks among the hunters. And they sent a clear message to any other human groups in the area about what happened to those who ventured into occupied territory. Some evidence suggests that certain groups developed rituals around human hunting that went far beyond simple sustenance. They collected trophies, skulls, teeth, jewelry made from human bones. They may have developed ceremonial practices where consuming human flesh became a rite of passage or a demonstration of power within the group. The most chilling realization is that these weren't monsters or aberrations. These were our direct ancestors. The same hands that crafted beautiful cave paintings and invented revolutionary tools also learned to efficiently process human corpses. The same brains that developed language and culture also calculated the most effective ways to terrorize and kill other human beings. Every human alive today carries the genetic legacy of both the hunters and the hunted. We are the descendants of those who survived this prehistoric nightmare, which means that somewhere in our DNA, in the deepest recesses of our evolutionary programming, lies the blueprint for both ultimate compassion and ultimate cruelty. The question that haunts anthropologists is not whether this happened. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what it did to us. How did this period of systematic interspecies predation shape the human psyche? And more disturbingly, how much of that ancient programming still influences our behavior today? What we've described so far was just the beginning. The small-scale tribal conflicts, the desperate acts of cannibalism, the hunting of isolated human groups. These were merely the opening moves in a much larger and more terrifying game. Across the ancient world, different species of humans were engaged in the ultimate evolutionary arms race. Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus. Multiple human species shared the same landscapes, competed for the same resources, and faced the same brutal mathematics of survival. Only one could emerge victorious. The Neanderthals were physically superior in almost every way, stronger, more muscular, with larger brains and bodies perfectly adapted to harsh climates. They had survived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years before our ancestors arrived. They were the established masters of their domain, and by all logical measures, they should have won. But Homo sapiens possessed something more dangerous than physical strength, a capacity for organized, systematic violence that exceeded anything the world had seen. While Neanderthals lived in small family groups, our ancestors developed the ability to coordinate attacks involving dozens or even hundreds of individuals. They turned warfare into a science. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe tells the story of this ancient genocide. Neanderthal settlements that thrived for millennia suddenly fall silent in the archaeological record. Their tools disappear, their burial sites end abruptly, and in the same layers of earth, Homo sapiens artifacts appear like markers of conquest. This wasn't a gradual displacement or peaceful coexistence. This was systematic extermination. Our ancestors didn't just outcompete the Neanderthals, they hunted them down like any other prey species. They developed strategies specifically designed to locate and eliminate Neanderthal groups with ruthless efficiency. The evidence suggests that Homo sapiens learned to exploit Neanderthal behavioral patterns against them. Neanderthals were creatures of habit, returning to the same seasonal camps using the same hunting grounds, following predictable migration routes. Our ancestors turned this predictability into a weapon, setting ambushes and coordinated attacks that left entire Neanderthal communities defenseless. But this wasn't just about territory or resources. This was about a fundamental shift in the nature of human consciousness itself. Homo sapiens developed something that anthropologists call coalitionary psychology, the ability to form large, complex alliances between unrelated groups for the specific purpose of eliminating competitors. They created networks of cooperation that spanned vast distances. Different Homo sapiens tribes would share information about Neanderthal movements, coordinate simultaneous attacks, and divide conquered territory according to complex agreements. This level of strategic thinking and long-term planning gave them an overwhelming advantage over their more physically powerful cousins. The psychological warfare was equally sophisticated. Homo sapiens learned to use terror as a tactical weapon. They would leave the mutilated remains of Neanderthal victims in conspicuous locations as warnings to other groups. They developed intimidation displays designed to break Neanderthal morale before attacks even began. Some evidence suggests they may have engaged in deliberate psychological torture, keeping Neanderthal captives alive for extended periods specifically to use their screams and suffering as tools for demoralizing other groups. The capacity for calculated cruelty that our species displayed during this period exceeds anything observed in other animals, including our closest primate relatives. The Denisovans in Asia faced similar systematic elimination. Homo erectus populations across Africa and Europe were methodically hunted down and exterminated. In every case, the pattern was the same. Homo sapiens would arrive in a region, rapidly identify and locate other human species, then implement coordinated campaigns of extermination that left no survivors. This wasn't random violence or accidental conflict. This was genocide as evolutionary strategy. Our ancestors understood, perhaps instinctively, that the existence of other human species represented an existential threat to their own survival. They couldn't simply outcompete their relatives. They had to eliminate them completely. The speed and thoroughness of these extinctions is staggering. Species that had survived for hundreds of thousands of years disappeared within a few millennia of Homo sapiens' arrival. The efficiency of the extermination campaigns suggests a level of organizational capability and strategic thinking that transformed our ancestors from just another human species into the ultimate apex predator. By 40,000 years ago, the war was over. Homo sapiens stood alone as the sole surviving human species on Earth. Every other branch of the human family tree had been systematically pruned away by our ancestors' capacity for organized, methodical violence. We are the descendants of history's most successful genocidal campaign. The genetic evidence is clear. We carry within our DNA the legacy of the ultimate survivors, the ones who proved that intelligence combined with ruthless aggression could overcome any physical advantage. The ancient hunts may have ended, but the hunters never truly disappeared. Walk through any modern city and you'll see them. The calculated gaze of someone sizing up potential competitors, the subtle territorial displays in business meetings, the way groups form and exclude others based on invisible tribal markers. The weapons have evolved, but the underlying psychology remains remarkably unchanged. We no longer track human footprints through morning mist, but we've developed far more sophisticated methods of identifying and targeting our prey. Social media algorithms help us locate ideological enemies. Corporate hierarchies provide structured hunting grounds where careers can be systematically destroyed. Political systems offer platforms for coordinated attacks on entire populations. The same coalitionary psychology that helped our ancestors exterminate the Neanderthals now drives modern phenomena that we struggle to understand. Why do ordinary people participate in genocide? Why do civilized societies suddenly turn on minority populations? Why does mob mentality override individual moral judgment so easily? The answer lies in our evolutionary programming. We are hardwired to form in-groups and identify out-groups as potential threats. We are designed to participate in coordinated violence against those we perceive as competitors or enemies. We carry within our genetic code the behavioral patterns that made our ancestors the most successful predators in human history. Modern warfare reveals these ancient patterns with disturbing clarity. The dehumanization of enemies, the systematic nature of ethnic cleansing, the way ordinary soldiers can efficiently process mass killing, these aren't aberrations or breakdowns of human nature. They're expressions of deeply embedded survival strategies that served our species well for hundreds of thousands of years. Even our economic systems reflect these predatory instincts. The ruthless competition for resources, the winner-take-all mentality, the way successful individuals and corporations eliminate competitors, it's all remarkably similar to the territorial behavior of our prehistoric ancestors. We've simply replaced stone spears with market manipulation and hostile takeovers. The technology changes, but the fundamental psychology remains constant. We still evaluate strangers as potential threats or resources. We still form exclusive alliances designed to benefit our in-group at the expense of others. We still participate in coordinated campaigns to eliminate or marginalize those we perceive as competitors. Perhaps most disturbingly, we still derive psychological satisfaction from the suffering of our perceived enemies. The ancient hunters who learned to enjoy the terror in their victims' eyes have passed that capacity down through countless generations. It manifests in everything from schoolyard bullying to online harassment campaigns to the enthusiastic public support for harsh treatment of criminal defendants. The difference is that we've learned to disguise these predatory impulses behind layers of moral justification and social convention. We tell ourselves we're defending justice, protecting society, or advancing important causes. But underneath the sophisticated rhetoric, the same ancient programming is running. Identify the other, coordinate with allies, eliminate the threat. We are still the hunters our ancestors were. We've just learned to hunt with words, laws, economic pressure, and social ostracism. Instead of stone tools and coordinated ambushes, the prey may not die physically anymore, but they can be destroyed just as thoroughly through modern methods of systematic harassment and exclusion. The sun sets low on the horizon, casting long shadows across an empty plain that stretches endlessly in all directions. A single figure walks alone through the fading light. Their footsteps echo softly against the ancient earth, each step a reminder of all the others who once walked this same path but will never walk it again. The wind carries no voices, no laughter, no songs, only silence. This is what victory looks like. This is the price of survival. We are that lone figure on the plain, Homo sapiens, the last human species standing walking through a world emptied of our relatives. We eliminated every other branch of the human family tree so thoroughly that we forgot they ever existed until archaeologists dug up their bones and reminded us what we had lost. The Neanderthals are gone. The Denisovans vanished. Every other human species that once shared this world with us has been hunted to extinction by our ancestors. We stand alone as both the ultimate survivors and the ultimate killers in human history. But in our moments of honest reflection, we must ask ourselves, was it worth it? Did our survival justify the systematic extermination of every other human species? Did our success require becoming the most efficient predators our planet has ever seen? The archaeological record gives us no easy answers, only disturbing questions. How much of our modern behavior is still driven by these ancient predatory instincts? How much of our capacity for both cooperation and cruelty stems from evolutionary programming, designed for hunting other humans? As the last light fades from the sky, one final question haunts the gathering darkness. If we encountered another human species today, what would we do? Would we welcome them as long-lost relatives, or would the ancient programming take over once again? Deep in our DNA, the hunters are still waiting, and they remember exactly what they were bred to do. The hunt never truly ends. It only evolves.